Somewhere in a trading office in New York, a screen just blinked red, and nobody outside that room noticed. Gold had been sitting quietly. Then, in a matter of minutes, it moved. Not because of a war, not because of a headline, because of a number that hadn't even been released yet, a number scheduled for July 29th. If you own gold, silver, or you're thinking about buying either one, what happens on that date could change the math on your savings before you even realize it happened. And here's the strange part. The clue that tells you what's coming didn't happen on July 29th at all. It happened 2 weeks earlier, on July 14th, when two things landed on the same morning. A report almost nobody reads in full, and a man almost nobody had heard of 18 months ago, standing in front of Congress. His name is Kevin Warsh. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why the way he talks, not just what he decides, has already moved the price of gold and silver more than most wars have this year. Stick with me here, because this isn't a story about interest rates. Not really. It's a story about how a handful of words from one man in Washington can reach into a retiree's savings account in Ohio, a small business owner's gold coins in a safe in Texas, and a young couple's silver stack in New Jersey, all on the same afternoon. If you're interested in money, investing, gold, silver, and protecting your financial future, go ahead and subscribe to Money Insights. And like this video, because every week we break down the biggest financial stories in simple English. No jargon, no shouting, just what's actually happening and why it matters to you. Now, let's go back to January. Gold was flying. Not climbing, flying. It touched an all-time high near $5,589 an ounce. Silver did something even wilder, spiking to $121.64. People who'd bought years earlier were sitting on numbers that felt almost unreal. Financial YouTube was full of victory laps. But here's where everything changes. By July, gold had fallen roughly 27% from that January peak. Silver had been cut nearly in half, down about 52%. Something had gone wrong. Or, depending on how you look at it, something had gone back to normal. What happened in between is the real story, and it starts with a chair swap that most Americans barely clocked. Jerome Powell's term as Fed chair ended in mid-May. His replacement, Kevin Warsh, was confirmed by the Senate in a vote of 54 to 45. The most partisan confirmation vote for a Fed chair in the central bank's history. Think about that for a second. The Federal Reserve is supposed to be the boring, apolitical grown-up in the room. This time, half of Washington didn't trust the new guy at all. Why does that matter to you, sitting at home with a 401k or a few gold coins in a drawer? Because the Fed doesn't just set interest rates, it sets the psychological temperature of every dollar you own. And Warsh walked in promising something nobody expected. At his very first meeting as chair in mid-June, Warsh did something almost nobody predicted. He skipped the dot plot, the chart where Fed officials anonymously show where they think interest rates are headed. No roadmap, no forward guidance. He told markets, in effect, that the Fed had misjudged inflation for 5 years, and he wasn't going to hand out promises he might have to break. Imagine driving at night and your GPS suddenly goes dark. That's what Wall Street felt like in June. Gold slid toward $340. It closed out its worst quarter since 2013. Unexpected statistic. The committee behind Warsh wasn't even united. When the minutes from that June meeting were finally released on July 8th, they showed a Fed split almost down the middle. 9 officials leaning toward at least one rate hike before the year was out, 8 expecting no change at all, and one lone voice still expecting a cut. Warsh himself submitted no projection whatsoever. Read that again. The most powerful economic institution in the world walked into the second half of 2026 without a clear internal consensus on what it was about to do. That should scare you a little. Not because chaos is coming, because uncertainty like that is exactly the fuel that moves gold and silver violently in both directions, and most people watching the headlines have no idea it's happening underneath them. Here's a quick translation, because this matters for everything that follows. Gold and silver don't pay you interest. They just sit there, quietly holding value. So when interest rates rise, holding a bond or a savings account that pays you 4 or 5% starts to look a lot more attractive than holding a shiny metal that pays you nothing. That's called the opportunity cost of gold, or the interest income you're giving up by holding it instead of something that yields cash. When rates rise, that cost rises, and gold usually gets less attractive. When rates fall, that cost shrinks, and gold usually shines. Simple version, higher rates are gravity pulling gold down, lower rates are the string letting it float. There's a historical parallel here worth sitting with for a second. Back in 2013, the Fed simply hinted, didn't even act, that it might slow down its bond buying program. Markets nicknamed it the taper tantrum. Bond yields spiked almost overnight, and gold, which had also been riding a multi-year rally, tumbled hard in the months that followed. Nothing had actually changed yet. Just the expectation of change was enough to move billions of dollars. That's the pattern echoing through 2026. It's rarely the decision itself that does the damage or the lifting. It's the expectation baked in beforehand. So when Warsh sounded hawkish in June, gravity won. And then, almost as quickly, everything flipped. On July 1st and 2nd, Warsh appeared at the European Central Bank's Forum in Sintra, Portugal, the kind of quiet, invitation-only conference where central bankers say things they wouldn't say on live television back home. And there, Warsh softened. He said inflation risks have come down in recent weeks. He called a possible July rate hike a family debate, something still being worked out behind closed doors. He noted that the Fed's preferred inflation gauge had been falling for 36 straight months on a year-over-year basis. Gold jumped 2.27% that day, clearing $430. Silver did even better, surging 3.75% to touch 61.73. Small detail that changes everything, that one appearance in a forum most Americans have never heard of, moved more money in precious metals markets in a single afternoon than most economic data releases do in a week. But almost nobody noticed this next part. Even while Warsh was softening his tone, he was also refusing to promise anything. He explicitly said he wasn't going to offer forward guidance going forward, a phrase that sounds almost like a riddle, but means something very real. The Fed, under this chair, wants to keep every meeting a live decision, unpredictable until the moment it happens. For an ordinary investor, a teacher with a Roth IRA, a truck driver with a stack of silver coins in the garage, a retired couple who bought gold as insurance against inflation. That unpredictability is the whole ballgame. It means the next headline could move your savings before you've even finished your coffee. Think about what a decision like this actually does to a real household. A retired school teacher who moved 10% of her savings into gold coins 3 years ago isn't thinking about basis points or dot plots. She's thinking about whether her insurance policy against inflation is still working. A young couple in their 30s, stacking silver every payday instead of buying lottery tickets, isn't tracking FOMC minutes for fun. They're trying to make sure their money is still worth something by the time they're 50. A small business owner who keeps a modest reserve of physical metal in a safe, separate from his business accounts, isn't gambling. He's hedging the same way he insures his building against fire, even though he hopes there's never a fire. None of them work at the Fed. None of them read FOMC minutes for a living. But every one of them is exposed to the exact same mechanism we just walked through, whether they realize it or not. That's the quiet unfairness of monetary policy. It's decided by 19 people in a room in Washington, and it's felt by everyone else, often without warning. And this is where the psychology gets interesting. When gold and silver fall 27% and 52% from their highs, most retail investors don't feel like they're witnessing a structural repricing of interest rate expectations. They feel like they made a mistake. They feel like they missed the top and got caught holding the bag. That emotional reaction, panic dressed up as regret, is exactly what causes people to sell low after buying high, the single most common and most avoidable mistake in all of investing. Now here's the part most people completely miss. On July 13th, Fed Governor Christopher Waller spoke to a room of economists in New York and said something simple but pointed, that no matter which inflation measure you looked at, prices had risen throughout the year, and the more troubling number was core inflation, the kind that strips out food and energy and tends to stick around. That comment, on its own, nudged the odds of a July rate hike higher. By some measures, the probability of a quarter-point hike on July 29th jumped from under 20% earlier in the month to nearly 36% within a matter of days. Suddenly, the family debate Warsh had described in Sintra looked a lot less settled. And then came July 14th, the day everything converged. At 8:30 in the morning, the Bureau of Labor Statistics released the June Consumer Price Index. This is the number that tells you, in plain terms, how much more expensive your groceries, your gas, your rent got compared to a year earlier. Economists expected inflation to ease slightly, largely because gas prices had dropped after tensions between the US and Iran calmed down for a stretch. What actually happened surprised almost everyone. Headline inflation fell 0.4% for the month, the sharpest one-month drop since April of 2020. The annual rate came in at 3.5%, well below the 3.8% economists had penciled in. Core inflation, the number the Fed watches most closely, held flat for the month, putting the yearly rate at 2.6%. Again, softer than expected. Imagine checking your phone that morning, expecting bad news about prices, and instead seeing the biggest one-month cooldown in over 6 years. Stock futures turned positive. Bond yields fell sharply. And for a moment, it looked like the Fed had room to breathe. But here's where the story gets complicated, and this is the reality checks almost nobody offers you. Just 90 minutes after that CPI report landed, Kevin Warsh sat down in front of the House Financial Services Committee to testify. Same morning, same news cycle. Two of the most important events for gold and silver in all of July, stacked back to back. almost as if designed to test how fast markets could process contradictory signals. Because remember, earlier that same week, oil prices had already started climbing again as tensions with Iran flared back up. The cool CPI number was, in a sense, a photograph of June. It didn't capture what was already happening in July. Some analysts openly called it a head fake, a number that looked reassuring on the surface while the ground underneath was already shifting again. This is the pattern almost nobody notices. Precious metals don't just react to what inflation is, they react to what investors believe the Fed will do about it next. And on July 14th, those two forces, a cooler than expected inflation report and a Fed chair testifying live on television, pulled markets in two directions at once. Silver, in particular, told the story in real time. It had been trading around 58.27 in the days before. On the morning of the CPI release, it rallied, touching $59 on $12 intraday, before settling back near $58.55. A small move, but a meaningful one, because it showed the mechanism working exactly the way the last few months had trained it to. Cooler inflation data lowers the odds of a hike. Lower hike odds mean lower future interest rates. Lower future interest rates mean less opportunity cost for holding silver. Silver ticks up. It's almost like watching a thermostat respond to a change in temperature, except the thermostat is wired directly to millions of people's retirement accounts. So where does that leave us heading into July 29th? As of just days before the decision, market pricing tools tracking Fed futures showed roughly an 83% probability that the Fed holds rates steady at 3.50% to 3.75%, and around a 17% probability of a quarter-point hike to 3.75%, 4.0%. Those odds shift by the hour. They are not a prediction. They are simply where traders are placing their bets right now based on everything we've just walked through. Here's a detail that could easily get buried, and it shouldn't be. The July meeting is what's known as a non-SAP meeting, meaning there will be no updated summary of economic projections, no fresh dot plot, no new official forecast from Fed officials about where rates go next. That won't happen again until September, which means the actual rate decision on July the 29th may matter less than the 11 words Kevin Warsh chooses at his press conference 30 minutes later. Read that again, because it's the whole thesis of this video. On July 29th, the number might not move much. The rate might hold. But the tone, hawkish or dovish, cautious or confident, could be the single biggest catalyst gold and silver see all summer. This has happened before, historically, though never in identical circumstances. Markets have repeatedly shown that a Fed chair's language, even without a policy change, can move precious metals more than the decision itself. Investors are watching Warsh's phrasing almost like lip readers, trying to catch whether he leans back toward the family debate tone from Sintra or back toward the harder edge from his very first press conference in June. Before we go further, let's slow down for a moment because a few of these terms get thrown around like everyone already understands them and most people don't, and that's not their fault. The Federal Reserve isn't a bank you can walk into. Think of it more like the thermostat for the entire U.S. economy. It doesn't control prices directly, but it controls the cost of borrowing money, and that cost ripples into everything. Mortgages, credit cards, car loans, business expansion, even how much your government pays to borrow. When the Fed raises rates, it's turning the thermostat down, trying to cool off spending and slow inflation. When it lowers rates, it's turning the heat up, trying to encourage borrowing and spending when the economy feels sluggish. Treasury bonds are simply IOUs from the U.S. government. When you buy one, you're lending Washington money, and in exchange, it pays you interest over time. When investors expect the Fed to keep rates higher for longer, those bonds start paying more attractive interest, which, just like we discussed with gold, makes non-yielding assets look less appealing by comparison. That's the tug-of-war happening constantly beneath the surface of every gold and silver headline you read. And debt matters here too, in a way that rarely gets its own spotlight. The U.S. government carries enormous debt, and every additional percentage point the Fed adds to interest rates makes servicing that debt more expensive, not just for you and me, but for the federal government itself. Some analysts argue that reality quietly limits how aggressively any Fed chair, including Warsh, can raise rates without creating strain elsewhere in the financial system. It's not the headline story, but it's the gravity well every decision has to orbit around. Now, step back from the day-to-day noise for a second, because there's a bigger picture forming underneath all of this, and it's the part that actually matters if you're holding gold or silver for the long run, not just trading headlines. Even with all this volatility, central banks around the world have continued buying gold at historically elevated levels. Some analysts point to a broader trend often called de-dollarization, countries diversifying away from heavy reliance on the U.S. dollar in their reserves. Silver, meanwhile, is on track for what the Silver Institute projects could be its sixth consecutive year of a supply deficit, meaning industrial and investment demand keeps outpacing what actually gets mined and recycled. That's not a prediction about price. It's a structural fact about scarcity that doesn't disappear just because the Fed changes its tone for one afternoon. Here's the future possibility almost nobody talks about on the nightly news. If more countries keep shifting even a modest slice of their reserves away from the dollar and toward physical gold, that's not a short-term trade. That's a decades-long shift in how the entire global financial system stores value. It wouldn't announce itself with a single dramatic headline. It would look exactly like what we've seen. Quiet, steady central bank purchases, month after month, regardless of what any single Fed chair says in any single press conference. Supply and demand, in other words, doesn't care about the news cycle. It just slowly, patiently does its work in the background while everyone else is busy watching the drama unfold on July 29th. That contrast, short-term noise versus long-term structure, is the single most important distinction anyone holding gold or silver needs to understand. The noise is what makes headlines. The structure is what actually determines whether your investment holds up over 5 or 10 years. That's why, even after this year's sharp pullback, some major bank research desks, including analysts at JP Morgan, have continued to project gold recovering into a range roughly between $4,800 and $6,300 by the end of the year, while other desks, like Bank of America, cut their average forecasts after the hawkish pivot in June, even while keeping longer-term price targets intact. These are opinions, not guarantees. Markets often surprise everyone, including the professionals paid to forecast them. So here's the honest, unglamorous truth sitting underneath all the drama. Nobody, not Kevin Warsh, not JP Morgan, not the sharpest trader in that New York office we started with, actually knows for certain what July 29th will bring. What we do know is the mechanism. Higher rates or hawkish language tend to pressure gold and silver lower in the short term. Lower rates or dovish language tend to lift them. And underneath all of that short-term noise, the long-term forces, central bank buying, industrial silver demand, a world slowly rethinking its relationship with the dollar, haven't gone anywhere. For the ordinary person watching this, here's why it actually touches your life, even if you've never bought an ounce of gold in your life. If the Fed raises rates or signals more hikes are coming, borrowing gets more expensive. Mortgages, auto loans, credit cards, small business loans. If it holds steady or leans dovish, that pressure eases, at least for now. Either way, the same decision that moves the price of gold in a Manhattan trading room also moves the interest rate on the truck loan in Ohio and the credit card balance in Georgia. It's all connected, whether you're watching the gold market or not. Let's talk about risk for a second, because that word gets thrown around loosely too. Risk isn't just the chance you lose money. In investing, it's really the chance that an outcome you didn't plan for actually happens. A retiree holding too much in cash faces the risk of inflation quietly eating away at her purchasing power every single year. A young investor holding too much in one volatile asset faces the risk of a sharp drawdown right when they need the money. Gold and silver, for many people, aren't meant to replace a diversified portfolio. Historically, they've often played the role of insurance within one, a small slice meant to hold steady or even rise when everything else gets shaky. That's a different job than being a get-rich-quick trade, and confusing the two is where a lot of people get hurt emotionally when a correction like this year's hits. And that, in the end, is what makes July 29th worth paying attention to. Not because it promises a guaranteed outcome for your portfolio, but because it's one of those rare moments where a single afternoon in Washington ripples out into nearly every financial decision millions of ordinary people will make in the weeks that follow. The mystery we opened with, that quiet red blink on a screen weeks before the actual decision, makes a lot more sense now. It wasn't a prediction. It was the market doing what markets always do, pricing in uncertainty before the rest of us even knew there was something to be uncertain about. Knowing that doesn't mean you can predict the next move. It means you don't have to panic over the next headline either. You now understand the mechanism connecting a jobs report, a CPI release, a testimony in Congress, and the price on a gold coin in your drawer. That understanding, more than any single price target, is what actually protects you. If you learned something new today, make sure to subscribe to Money Insights and like this video. More powerful financial insights are coming next.